Final thoughts on the Jacob Trouba saga for now. Plus, we talk about a potential remaining UFA target for the Rangers and introduce Ranger fans to the team's fourth-round selection, Raoul Boilard.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1107 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sport stops sporting the way we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There is something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So definitely wanted to kind of put a bow on this entire Jacob Trouba saga that has unfolded throughout the preseason here, the offseason rather. And, really it's only the span of about, 2 or 3 days where all this chaos happened, where the rumors started that Jacob Trouba was going to get traded. And then, oh, no, he's not going to get traded. He's going to put the Red Wings on his no trade list and all this other stuff, the stuff with his wife and his residency. And that's kind of where I wanted to start this whole section. Just wanted to point out how many questions regarding Jacob Trouba are seemingly still unanswered. Was the deal ever really in place with the Detroit Red Wings? Did Larry Brooks jump the gun for whatever reason? Was there at least some smoke to this fire? Does Jacob Trouba's wife's residency actually extend Trouba's full no-move clause? I've seen some people claiming that to be the case, but I'd love to see a source. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I have not seen an NHL reporter or one of the Ranger beat reporters come out and say that, yes, that is exactly what's happening here, that Jacob Trouba's full no-move clause extends along with his wife's residency. So if you have that source, please let me know, and would love to talk about that in a future episode. The other question that I have, and this is the one where I would have an issue with Jacob Trouba and how he has handled this on his side. Has he really threatened to not report to a team that trades for him? And the follow-up question for that, of course, is he just trying to sabotage a trade through some, let's just say, shady means? Or would he actually follow through with that? Would Jacob Trouba actually sit out a season of hockey if he was traded and forfeit $8 million on his contract for this season and $8 million on his contract for next season? My guess would be no, but I guess I can't say for sure. I mean, I don't know Jacob Trouba personally, and I don't know what he's thinking. And the other question, are the Rangers still looking for a trade partner? We know that the second buyout window is open for the Rangers now that Ryan Lindgren has filed for salary arbitration. So would the Rangers still think about buying out Jacob Trouba? Drury doesn't seem to be a big fan of the buyouts. We've had a couple of players in recent seasons that are buyout candidates, and he's never gone down that road. Doesn't mean that he would never do it under any circumstances. Doesn't mean he would never do it with Jacob Trouba. But thus far, he hasn't. Is it on the table? Is it an option? In theory, yes, but I still, to this point, ever since, all the whole situation got messy, I began thinking that Jacob Trouba would be back with the Rangers, and I still do think that. Of course, there's part of me that would really like this for it to be the end between, the whole marriage between the Rangers and Jacob Trouba. But the one reason why I'm kind of just whatever about it at this point is because, yes, the Rangers, if they traded Jacob Trouba, if they moved all of his $8 million cap hit, or if they moved, $5.5 million of his $8 million cap hit, because that was the rumor that was out there. If there was going to be a trade with Detroit, the Rangers would hang on to $2.5 million of that. But yeah, that's nice. I mean, you clear some cap space and everything, but that cap space can't be put to as good of use as it would have been a week ago today on last Monday, when free agency started. And we're in a situation now where all the big UFAs are gone. There's one, solid UFA who's still out there. We're going to talk about him in a little bit here. But yeah, all the big UFAs, all the big fish in the pond, they've all signed with this team or with that team. The Rangers still have to re-sign Ryan Lindgren. They still have to re-sign Braden Schneider, if we assume that both of them will be back. Right now, the Rangers have just a shade over $8 million in cap space. So they have enough money to re-sign both of those defensemen. But once they do that, I mean, there's not really a lot of money left if you don't move Jacob Trouba in his contract. And again, even if you do move Trouba and you move his contract or you buy him out to create some more cap space, where exactly are you going to put that money at this point? The UFAs just aren't there. Now, you could maybe put it toward an extension for Igor Shesterkin, because obviously if you trade or buy out or waive Jacob Trouba or otherwise, make it where his cap hit is no longer on the books for this team, then it's also off the books for next season. And you are now in a situation where, okay, let's do an extension with Igor Shesterkin, or let's even do an extension with Alexis Lafreniere. It sounds like, according to most reports, that, Lafreniere is not going to be looking to sign an extension until next offseason. That's fine. You could maybe put that money toward Igor Shesterkin. But as far as UFAs are concerned, I mean, that whole wave of players has come and gone, and they've all found new homes. And as a result, it's kind of just meh as far as I'm concerned, moving on from Jacob Trouba. There's part of me, again, that would still like to see it happen, because I think Trouba's play in the playoffs last year left something to be desired, to put things very, very mildly. But again, you can't really, at least for this season, put Jacob Trouba's salary into good use anywhere else, at least not as far as I can see. The other question that a lot of people have thrown out there: does Jacob Trouba remain the captain of the Rangers going forward? I touched on this a little bit in yesterday's episode, and I think he probably will, and I think he probably should, if for no other reason than for this not to become even more of a bleep storm than it's already become. There's already a lot of drama and a lot of questions that have been left unanswered, at least as of now. We talked about that just a minute ago. I think you're better off still riding with Jacob Trouba. Look, Trouba, he might not be the most popular player among Ranger fans right now, but among the Ranger players in that locker room, it seems like he's very well liked, very well respected, and that every single player in that locker room likes and appreciates having Jacob Trouba as the captain of the team. And if that's the case, then there's no real need to change it, I don't think. I mean, again, neither party has really handled this all that well this offseason, this whole Trouba saga that's been going on here, Jacob Trouba included. But I wouldn't force a change and make this even more of an issue than it's already become. If they do change captains and they do take away the captaincy from Jacob Trouba, my vote for the next Ranger captain would be Vincent Trocheck. But again, I just don't think that's going to happen. And if for no other reason than just to avoid a little bit of the drama and everything that comes along with that, just leave Jacob Trouba as the captain if he's going to be back for this upcoming season. It is a frustrating situation, though, because, going into the offseason, we thought there might be some, not like wholesale changes, but, some pieces moving around, a couple of guys signing in free agency, maybe a trade or two. And, we got Carrick and we got Riley Smith, but not the impactful moves that we were thinking and maybe hoping that the Rangers would pull off. And, the offseason started good with the Rangers waiving Barclay Goodrow, essentially, using the waiver wire to trade him to the San Jose Sharks. That was a necessary move just based on Goodrow's cap hit, and it felt like it was a sign of things to come. And then there's that report that they're going to be moving on from Trouba, and that doesn't happen. Might they trade Capo Caco? They're going to open up all this cap space, and they're going to bring in all these players, or at least a decent amount of contributing players, maybe not superstars, but role players for this team. And it just never happened. The way that it started this offseason with the Goodrow waiving, that's not the way that it continued to go. And it looks like, Jacob Trouba going to be back with the Rangers next season. But we'll see how it goes. We're going to leave it there for now. I'm not going to talk too much about Trouba in the next few episodes. We got other things to do. Obviously, if anything happens, if he gets traded, waived, bought out, or any other drama unfolds in one way or another, then obviously we will go back and talk about Jacob Trouba. For the time being, those are my final thoughts on the situation for right now. So we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. Going to switch gears. A couple of you have asked me about a specific unrestricted free agent that is still out there, has not signed with a new team, and if this player might be a fit for the New York Rangers. We are going to talk about that player in just a second. And then, like I said, going to be talking about the Rangers' 4th round draft selection from this year's class as well. We're going to do all that fun stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing the way we all want them to. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. All we have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that we're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, we just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And for the everydayers, you guys are definitely going to want to stick around. We're going to be recording some crossovers. Some are going to be possibly full episodes. Others might just be, a certain segment for an episode. But we're going to be talking with the guys from Locked On Penguins, Hunter and Patrick. Also going to be talking to JD of Locked On Ducks. I want to ask JD about, Sam Carrick and what he knows about him. And obviously with the Penguins guys, going to be asking about Riley Smith and, how he did with the Penguins and what their thoughts were to the whole trade as well. And what are his strengths and weaknesses and all that fun stuff. A lot still going on with Locked On New York Rangers. We'll keep an eye on the free agent market and also continue to talk about this draft class. And I mentioned, free agents and guys that are still out there. And it's slim pickings as far as the UFAs that are still available. But the one that kind of stands out a little bit as probably being, I would say, the best, the most useful player that you could sign as a free agent right now, as far as guys that are still available. If we take, length and terms and money off the table, just the best all-around player, the most useful, the most helpful player that remains as a free agent, I think that's going to be 27-year-old winger Daniel Sprong. He is 6 feet tall, 195 pounds. He can play either wing. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, a couple of you guys have asked me about Sprong, so I figured this might be a good time to talk about him. And for anybody that might not know a whole lot about him, he has played 8 seasons in the NHL, 2.5 seasons with the Penguins. He actually started there when he was 18 years old, then 1.5 seasons with the Ducks, 1.5 seasons with the Caps, 1.5 seasons with the Kraken, and 1 with the Detroit Red Wings. So 344 games, 85 goals, 74 assists, 159 points. He's also a -2. His average 1157 of ice time throughout his career, 69 block shots, 198 hits. One thing worth pointing out for anybody that, might be underwhelmed by those offensive numbers there. I mean, it doesn't jump off the page. It's less than a half point per game for his career, but it is worth pointing out that Sprong in the last 2 seasons has seemingly reached a new level. Now, it's not a superstar level by any stretch of the imagination, but if we look at his last 2 seasons, the second most recent season, 2022-2023 with the Seattle Kraken, 21 goals and 25 assists in 66 games there. So 46 points. His previous career best point total before that was only 23. So he doubled it 2 years ago at the Kraken. And then this past year with Detroit, 18 goals, 25 assists in 76 games with the Red Wings. So you're looking at 43 points there, a slight regression from the previous season, but still somebody that looks like he's going to settle in as like a third line type player and somebody that can give you 40 plus points per season. Also worth talking about his most recent contract. It was with the Detroit Red Wings, 1 year, $2 million. He probably feels like he deserves a raise based on, how well he's played, or at least, I don't want to make it sound like he's a perennial all-star, but he has taken his game to a new level the last couple of seasons. And that might be why Sprong is still out there as a free agent. He might feel like he's done enough that he should be able to get, a solid offer from a team in terms of both length and dollars. Maybe he just hasn't found an offer that he likes at this point. But if you're the Rangers and you do want to bring him in, and we're going to talk in a minute about whether that's a viable and or smart option or not. But if you're the Rangers and you like Sprong and you do want to bring him in, I think the way to appeal to him is you basically say that, hey, we know that you didn't get the long-term deal, the money maybe that you were looking for. Why not come to the Rangers on a 1-year deal and give free agency another chance next offseason? Because if you come to the Rangers, you've got a shot at being in a top 6 role. Now, if they were to add Sprong, I get the feeling that he would probably be on the third line one way or another. Riley Smith would be on the top line with Mika or Kreider. I mean, it's really the second line, but you guys know how it is. They always list that as the top line. I think Smith would probably have the inside track, but Sprong would at least have his name in the hat, as far as, they've tried everybody else there, right, with Mika and Kreider. So he'd have at least a chance at that. You also get to join a team that led the NHL in wins and was 2 wins away from going to the Stanley Cup final. And maybe you've got a chance to win a championship this upcoming season. There's certainly that. Sprong, for what it's worth, has only ever played in 13 playoff games, and it has not really gone that well for him, at least in terms of offensive production. 3 playoff games with the Caps in 2020, 2021, and then 10 playoff games with the Kraken in 2022, 2023. So you're looking at just 13 total playoff games for Sprong, 1 goal and 2 assists. But you can maybe appeal to Sprong. I'm sure, look, most players in the NHL, they want to go to the playoffs and they want to make deep runs and they want to win a Stanley Cup and get their name on the most beautiful trophy in sports. So if we assume that Daniel Sprong, that appeals to him on at least some level, then you can kind of dangle that a little bit too. You're joining a great team here, and there's a very, very good chance that you're going to be back in the playoffs and be one of the better teams in the NHL, just like they were this past season. So really, I mean, Sprong, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest like Daniel Sprong fan on paper. He's all right. There's nothing that really jumps off the page for him, for me at least. Again, he has improved in the last couple of years, so there is that. But I just look at Daniel Sprong and I look at the frame and I look at the lack of physicality, and I just feel like he's not really the type of player that the Rangers need right now. Could he make them a little bit deeper? Sure. Could he make them slightly better? Yes. Could he give them, something of another offensive threat? Yeah. But I feel like there's kind of some redundancy. He kind of plays a similar game as Riley Smith, but he's just not as good as Riley Smith. And when you look at right wing, I mean, we've talked about how it's thin, but you've got Riley Smith, Alexis Lafreniere, Capo Caco. Where does Sprong fit in there? Now, you could put him on the left wing because he does play both wings. You could put him third line left wing, but if you do that, well, now you've got to knock Will Cooley down to the fourth line. I mean, do you really want to do that? I wouldn't even want to do that. Like, I want Will Cooley in a top 9 role. Cooley played well last season. And that's to say nothing of, like, players that we've mentioned that are prospects for the Raiders. Guys like Brent Othman, guys like Brett Berard, they're both knocking on the door of playing in the NHL. I think Othman has a great chance of making the team out of training camp. So they could be in the mix. I don't know. For me, Sprong, it's just not worth it. He just doesn't move the needle enough, and I don't want him to block the path of guys like a Brian Othman, like a Brett Berard, and I don't want him to force Will Cooley down to the fourth line. So you could do it, and I will throw out one stat that impressed me quite a bit, and it is in Sprong's favor here. He has averaged in the last 2 seasons 2.69 points per 60 minutes of 5v5 play. And that is 11th in the NHL. 11th in the NHL for forwards with at least 1,000 minutes at 5v5 hockey. So there is that. And by the way, in that stat, he's ahead of guys like Artemi Panarin, Leon Draisaitl, and Jason Robertson. So that's tremendously impressive. And clearly he is somebody that brings something to the table. But for all the reasons I just mentioned, I don't think I would try to squeeze Daniel Sprong into this lineup. And if you do sign him, it has to be 1 year. Cannot go longer than a year for the reasons that we've documented over and over on this podcast. Because, next offseason, you're looking at a situation where a lot of New York Rangers need to be paid. They need new contracts, and every single one of them is going to be in line for a raise. So you cannot have Daniel Sprong overlapping, even if it's for a reasonable amount of money, and cutting into your budget for Igor, for Lafreniere, for Keandre Miller, and maybe even Capo Caco if you want to keep him around next season as well. So I'm kind of against the idea of signing Sprong, if I'm being completely honest here, for, again, all the reasons I just mentioned. But if you do bring him in, absolutely, positively has to be for 1 year and 1 year only. So we'll just leave things there. Going to shift our attention in just a second to the NHL draft, and more specifically, the player that the Rangers selected in the 4th round of this year's NHL draft. And we will do that in just a second. All right, let's go and keep everything rolling here. Want to go back to a topic that we began to discuss for a little while there. Obviously, you have the NHL draft, but then 2 days later, free agency starts. So we got the chance to talk about Emery, the defenseman that the Rangers took in the 1st round this year, and we talked about him at great length, did a whole episode on him right after it happened. What I want to do now, though, what we do every season, throughout the offseason here, we're going to go right down the line, right through the Rangers draft class, and talk about every player for, at least a segment on various episodes of Locked On New York Rangers. So we'll continue to do this as the offseason progresses here. But today, we're going to be talking about Raoul Boilard. He is an 18-year-old center with a lefty shot, 6'1", 190 pounds, lefty shot. I said that already, lefty shot. The Rangers, for what it's worth, traded up to take Boilard. They traded up 8 spots. So basically, it's a very minor trade. The Rangers sent their own 4th round pick from this year's draft, which was number 127 overall, to the Nashville Predators along with a 7th round draft pick, 7th, not second, a 7th round draft pick in 2026 in exchange for this pick. So basically, they swapped 4th round picks this year, and the Predators 2 years from now will also have a 7th round pick that originally belonged to the Rangers. That move allowed the Rangers to bump up 8 spots from number 127 overall to number 119 overall. So it's fine. It's fine that they did that. I know some people think that the Rangers are a little careless with their draft picks, and I would tend to agree with that, but nobody's going to be lamenting a 7th round draft pick 2 years from now. So they trade up. They got their guy. Props to them for doing that. If you trade up to get somebody, clearly you see something that you like. You want to get there before any of these other teams can get their hands on him. And there are some things to like about Boilard. He lit up the QMJHL. It was his first season there this past year with Bay Kumo. They were the runner-up of the QMJHL playoffs. He skated in 68 games, 22 goals, 40 assists, 62 points. He was a plus 27. And then in 16 playoff games, 4 goals, 4 assists, plus 5. He also had at least one overtime winner during the season, the regular season. I was able to track that down on YouTube. The later you get in the draft, information and videos you can watch on players becomes somewhat scarce, although there was a decent amount about Boilard. 6 publications here in front of me ranked him going into the draft. And these 6 publications had him anywhere between number 37 and number 90. Dauber Prospects had him at number 37 overall, which is a second rounder, actually it's an early second rounder. And as low as number 90 by Andrew Forbes. The Rangers got him at number 119 overall. So going by the general consensus here, it sounds like he has the chance to be a steal, at least relative to where he was drafted this year. As far as his strengths, and again, I'm not a professional scout. I have not been able to pour over dozens of hours of footage on this player, but I'm just going by what the scouts say. They do this for a living. They know their stuff. But as far as his strengths are concerned, what I'm gathering is that he's very patient with the puck, has a good shot, but is an even better passer. One of those guys that's always engaged in the play and very willing to go into the corners and fight for a puck. As far as weaknesses, the general consensus that I'm getting here from all these different scouts is that defense is the area where he's a little bit deficient and it needs some work, and specifically his defensive positioning. It sounds like there's times where he can get a little bit lost out there. But the good news about that is that that's correctable. You get some good coaching and you just play more hockey and get acclimated to what you're doing out there. I mean, he's only 18 years old. So that's one of those things where I think a player can certainly improve. The other weakness is that his skating is decent, but not great, and he doesn't tend to win the race to many loose pucks. So there is that to consider as well. Something else that I noticed that was pretty noteworthy for me is that he had a big showing at the 2024 Kubota Top Prospects game. He was on Team Red. Team Red won the game 3-1, and he had 2 goals and an assist in that game. So he had a hand in all 3 goals that his team scored. He was also interviewed after being drafted by the Rangers very briefly. All the draft picks, they get them up to the podium and the reporters ask some questions and pretty basic standard stuff here. But he was asked about what it meant to him that the Rangers not only drafted him, but, traded up to go get their guy here. And he said, it means a lot. It means they like me. So that's good. A good organization that likes me is a good sign. And then he was also asked to, describe his game. He said he's an offensive center, good playmaker, good on faceoffs, want to continue to develop and be a two-way center. And he mentioned the faceoffs, and I'm a big faceoff guy. The everydayers, you guys know that. And I just love the fact that the Rangers this past year went from a team that was always just so bad on faceoffs. It had been, I think, since 2007, 2008, where they won more than half their draws until this past season. And they were, a top 3 team in faceoffs in the entire NHL. So Boilard won 57.6% of his draws this past season. That was good for number 6 in the QMJHL. So obviously a beast on the faceoff circle. And I figure we can wrap up this segment and this player profile by going to the scouts. I'll read a couple of scouting reports for you guys on Boilard. This is what Elite Prospects had to say in their 2024 NHL Draft Guide. Boilard supports the play well in all 3 zones with his playmaking, off-puck reads, and physical skills. He shortens passing lanes, makes plays evident for teammates, and provides them easy outlets out of pressure. The puck rarely stays on his stick for long. He carries it, attracts a defender, and then passes to the next logical option. That's something that I've kind of gathered too, is that it seems like a lot of scouts believe that he has a pretty high hockey IQ and just one of those players that knows what he's doing out there. So we've got another one here from Dauber Prospects. Face-off specialist with great hockey sense, a strong motor, and decent playmaking. Physical game and skating need work, but has upside as a middle six defensive center. And we'll do one more here. This is from Jason Bukala. Am I saying that right? Bukala? I should know that, but I don't. Jason Bukala. Skilled creative prospect, makes plays off the rush and in small areas in the offensive zone. Solid and agile skater. Playmaker on the power play, who's equal parts shooter and distributor, always in motion. Good size, but doesn't play with physical pushback. Average defensive detail. He's not a liability, but it's not his area of strength. Projects as a potential third-line forward at even strength, but a skilled forward who should find a role on one of the power play units. So yeah, overall, I think a good pick by the Rangers. I don't feel like this is somebody that necessarily has massive upside, but it's the fourth round. You're not really going to find a player like that. Somebody that does a lot of the little things right, high hockey IQ, very good passer. Somebody that the general consensus seems to be that this is somebody that will slot in as a middle six forward. And that's fine. We're getting into the fourth round. Like I said, you're not going to find the perfect player. Somebody that has, maybe a couple of areas that he needs to work on, but overall, a solid player. And I think a good pick by the Rangers. And we'll obviously track his progress going forward as we do with, every Ranger prospect and see how it goes. But I figure we can pretty much call it there for today. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well at LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is at LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.